The small block 400 is an often forgot about engine in the small block world, so today we're going to talk about using that in a TPI setup to get the most power possible. 400 small block was an early 70s engine that really didn't get the love it deserved. This can be found in early 70s pickup trucks, things like the half tons, 3/4 tons, 1 tons, the K5 Blazer. It can also be found in a few different cars as well, things like the midsize A-body or the full-size B-body cars until 1976. Now, in 1974, this engine got a little bit of an update with the 4-barrel carb, but still only made like 265 horsepower with a net of like 150. Thing was terrible for the day, but with a little compression and a little bit of cam, you can really pick up a lot of speed. The 400 does have a few different key features that the 350 just doesn't have. Things like bigger journals on the mains, things like increased bore 4.125 versus a stroke of 375. This is a obviously 50 cube bigger engine, and that translates into more lower end torque. Now on top of that, the heads are a little bit different here. So they don't have cooling passages like the 350 does or 305 does between a couple of cylinders. Instead, they use steam holes. So it's very important that when you do get aftermarket heads for the 400, you actually call the company, say, hey, I'm building a 400. I need a part number for this engine. And a lot of times they can work within your specs and get you something. It might be a little more expensive, but it's definitely worth it to get your gains. I'll also throw in that because of the increased nickel content in the bolt mains, they're more sought after than the 4-bolt mains on the 400s, meaning that the 2-bolt mains are actually pretty dang strong, can hold up to quite a bit of boost. So it's worth using these engines in your builds. Casting numbers can be found down below if you're interested in casting numbers on what ones you want to look for. If you're interested in building a small block 400, what you're going to do is hit Facebook Marketplace or you're going to hit eBay. Now, you can buy a custom block. They're fairly expensive, but that's definitely an option if you want to go that route. So what we're looking at here is outfitting this with Flowtech 200cc heads. These have a 64cc chamber, which means they're sitting about 11-to-1 compression ratio. Now, with this engine, I'd run E85. Now, I'm a big 85 proponent anyway, and I think that TPI just, it makes sense, right? These high compression engines with TPI just makes sense in the 85, especially if you can go ahead and throw a little bit of dish in that piston, bring compression down to like a 8-to-1, throw some boost at it, and make an absolute ton of power. Now, obviously, it's going to take down your actually aspirated power quite a bit, but you do have that option as well. Now, on top of these heads, we're running 1.7 ratio rockers. Now, it's important to note that with this system, you definitely want to go ahead and clay your pistons and your valves to ensure of clearance. You definitely don't want to throw a piston into a valve and throw that valve through your head. Not a good time. So as far as the TPI system goes on top of this, we're going to run a stock TPI plenum on top that has been ported, cut out, and just overall opened up. AS&M runners are what we're going to want to run here for making sure you have airflow through the runners themselves. And we're going to pair that with an Edelbrock or a Cell ported, extrude honed, whatever you can do lower. Now, what that's going to do is give you the air movement that you need. Because stock intake, even when ported, you're sitting at like 230 CFM, and that's something that's just peak at like a 450 horsepower or so. We want to make about 5, so we definitely want to get to that 250 to 260 CFM range. And the AS&M runners run about 265 CFM, so any way we can get close to that as possible is the goal. Now for exhaust, 1 3/4 inch headers with 38-inch length primaries. This is set up because I want long primaries, I want long exhaust, so that I can get all of my torque numbers that I need. Now, if you go ahead and throw on a 3-inch dual system with a crossover, that would be ideal for the setup because of the horsepower they're making here. If you're running something like 450 to 400 horsepower, I'd probably run 2.5-inch duals. If you're running anything under 400, 3-inch single to a nice Y is phenomenal. That's the setup you definitely want. As far as the cam goes, this is a Comp Cam 290 HR12. This is a pretty big cam, 230, 244 duration. That's a pretty big duration cam. 1.7 rockers, like I said, which brings us to a number of 578, 612 for the lift. These heads can handle a little bit more than that, but again, make sure you hit the clay and make sure you keep track of all of this stuff. Make sure your engine build goes off without a hitch. So this is tapped off with a 112 lobe separation angle at a 2-degree advance, which means that we should have quite a bit of low end power. We could tweak this a little bit to bring higher end power in, but obviously TPI, long runner, we're making low end power here. Take a look at the numbers and see what we got. So taking a look at our horsepower and torque numbers here, we're looking at 496 peak horsepower at 5,000 RPM, 567 pounds of torque at 4,000 RPM. That is massive. That is scooting that car off the line. I would expect like 1.6 in the 60 foot out of something like that. That would be incredible. and the car would run extremely strong with a 2400 RPM stall. Now on top of that, we have 381 average horsepower across from 2000 to 6500 RPM and 474 average foot-pounds of torque. That is massive. That is more torque than most engines make. So the actual off the line of this thing's going to be incredible. Like I said, if it was me building for my car, I'm probably going to end up going down to like a 9 or 8 to 1 compression ratio, which this is the engine build that I'm looking at building for my Camaro from 91 Z28. I want to take that car, do some different things to it, and keep the TPI build true at its heart, and then maybe swap in an LQ9. We'll see how that goes. If you guys are interested in seeing what max effort, max cost TPI can do for you, click the video on the screen right here. That will show you a 454 small block build from Blueprint.